Welcome, everybody, to the Tim and John Show. I want to start by saying that we are going old school, and if you want to receive these episodes first, you've got to be on our email list. And we just started uploading our videos actually today to a private server, and thanks to Zach and Mike for hooking John and I up, and in turn hooking everybody else up. And so that way, if we are taken down from YouTube, it's not going to be a big deal because we want to encourage people to be on our email list, going to our website, and not just relying on the beast over here with YouTube. That's eventually, they already kicked us off our World Alternative Media channel, and now we've gotten stronger on BitChute. And so, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. But right now, the website is still in progress. But if you guys want to type in, it's actually down below. It's bit.ly/TimJohnEmail will get you on our email list. And if you want to take out the word email and just write in Discord, so bit.ly/TimJohnDiscord, you can get on our Discord channel and see where all the action is happening. And last week was our first subscriber-only email list, and we had the SpaceX co-founder Jim Cantrell. So, we kicked it off pretty good, and then, very good. And then this week's is going to be Richard Grove, who's just an OG and, researcher and just, one of the smartest dudes around. So I would highly recommend you guys get on the list. So then that way you don't have to wait, 2 weeks later to get it on YouTube. But with that said, today we have the pleasure of interviewing Peter Quinones, hopefully I got that right, from Freeman Beyond the Wall podcast. And first, Peter, can you let people know where they can find you? And if they're listening to you on YouTube, I'm sure that you probably would prefer they probably listen some other venue, if I had to take a guess. Yeah, I did check out last night your interview you did with Scott Horton, and that guy is just a wealth of information. I've heard him speak, several times before, probably dozens of times, and there probably isn't anybody when it comes to knowing the history of various wars and all the minutia than Scott Horton. At least I haven't met that person, at least from like the good side of things, so to speak. Maybe there's some globalists and some bad people that might know a little bit more because they're on the inside track actually doing this sort of stuff to mess things up. But I really did enjoy the interview, and he was just going through and basically getting into all the details of all the history of everything Joe Biden has done throughout the years, and especially his involvement with war. And maybe we can get into that in a little bit. But I was checking out your I don't want to say your YouTube page, but it was just easy because I'm on YouTube right now, as much as I've been talking about getting off of it. But you had the the real reason the South succeeded, and that's something where we haven't done an episode on that yet. But I have read Thomas DiLorenzo's Real Lincoln, so I thought that that is something that's probably worth talking about. I see there's videos on non-aggression principle, Marxist Revolution with Dave Smith. Of course, you had. Yeah, do you want to get into that, maybe that a little bit more, and what you mean by a suicide pact? Because at a certain point when they're trying to forcibly inoculate us, and talking about making people's lives very difficult if they don't get vaccines, and going down the rabbit hole. Is that sort of where you're going with the non-aggression principle, or am I just making a bad assumption? Too much. Yeah, it is, without a doubt. Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, I mean, I think there is, some, I don't know what the best word to say this is, like sort of mamsy pamsy in the libertarian space of, it becomes more of a, yeah. Yeah, so it sort of reminds me of, Larkin Rose had I don't know if it was I think it was a blog that he had wrote several years ago in regards to when's it okay to kill a cop. And, basically, the short version of it is, is it, before you get into the boxcar. And so obviously a lot of right wing people got very upset with that. But at a certain point, I mean, you see that's where things are unfortunately headed. And right before the show, we talked for a couple minutes, and I was a Libertarian Party delegate this go around and decided to not even vote for the Libertarian Party. I wrote in Kanye West just because I figured, what would piss off the most amount of people? I'll piss off all my anarchist friends. I'll piss off all my Libertarian friends. I'll piss off all the Republicans, piss off the Democrats. And, I'll piss off all the black people because I'll say that I'm the only one that's actually voted for a guy that was 100% black because Obama was only half black. So I was like, what can piss off the most amount of people in one fell swoop? And I'll just go right in Kanye West. And sitting through and spending, I don't know how much time and effort I spent to, drive down to Tucson for, 3.5 hours away and be, lobby to become a delegate and then do all the BS of all the online stuff. And I mean, probably 30, 40 hours wrapped up into this. And it was all a big joke. And it really got to the point where, okay, what are we doing here? We are in this spot where we're in 2020. We've got all of our freedoms just being absolutely eviscerated. And we want to putting up candidates that are just talking about, cutting government like a tiny bit here and a tiny bit there. And it's just not an exciting message. And I knew that if Joe Jorgensen or Lincoln Chafee got in, those were the two that I just absolutely was not going to do anything to promote whatsoever. And, a lot of that stems from, I was in 2012, Ron Paul guy, and it's probably not a big surprise to a lot of people. And then, shortly after 2008 is when I discovered him. Then ended up, getting really pissed off the Libertarian Party in August of 2016 when Bill Weld said that handguns that were actually more dangerous than AR-15s, and we need to basically limit both of them. I mean, I'm paraphrasing there, but I do have the interview where I think it was like August 16th, 2016, or August 12th, where he said, yeah, yeah, and I definitely agree with. especially especially when you get up to who's actually going to the convention, because the average person at the convention is not really representative of the average more person that more identifies as a libertarian or doesn't really realize that they're libertarian. And then eventually you get down to minarchism, then eventually get down to anarchism and voluntarism, and all these words are just so polluted these days. But when it comes down to also private company, well, a lot of these private companies, the largest, like, at least like the publicly traded companies, if you take a look at the underlying ownership of them, it's mainly from the government. A lot of it's from the government pensions. And then you take a company like Google, for instance, or the Alphabet company. I mean, that was started by In-Q-Tel, which is a CIA venture capital firm. And those guys are all obviously just front guys. I mean, I don't really even think Zuckerberg was, really behind Facebook. I mean, I think some of that was stolen, and same thing with, Microsoft. If you really get into the whole history of how he stole the technology from this guy, Gary Kurtl. I mean, it goes on and on and on. But, with libertarians, I feel like a lot of times they want to get so caught up in the minutia of things that really, I mean, we're here arguing. I mean, what we spent like an entire day trying to set an agenda, I think is, I mean, that was the biggest waste of time I think I've ever, I mean, I'm glad I did it so that way I could bitch about it being a waste of time from a first-hand perspective. But I mean, somebody like Josh Smith, who wanted to become the chair, I mean, that's like almost like a nightmare to me. I'm like, that's the last thing in the world I'd want to be. It'd be the chair of that. I wasn't there in person because by then it was already going to be Joe Jorgensen, and I fully did not support her. I went to the first 2 days, I believe, of the in person, or the live one, and then the third day I just gave up my spot to somebody else because I think by then Josh was already not voted in, and we had Joe Jorgensen win, and at that point I just knew that this was going to be some milk toast campaign that I couldn't get behind, and in a year that you have such contrast with Biden and Trump and two hated people, just like you did in 2016, that we just run this, oh look, she's a woman, and yeah, I'm sure she's a nice person, and I did meet her in person, and it was sort of, I was the least impressed by her out of anybody in person when I met her. Yeah, I got it. Yeah, I got it right here.
That's what
100%.
politics has always been. The LP is not going to be able to do that. So I followed it up with an article the next week. You have to start using Alinsky type tactics. Name your enemy. Go after the left. Go after the left in the party, the hidden neoliberals, the prags. Go after the that small minority of insane leftist pronouns in their bio lunatics, and you purge them. You call them the enemy until the point where you make them cry, where they can't sleep at night, so that they leave. And then you take over the party. And what do? On a national level, once you start getting a platform, you start calling out the neoliberal left. You start calling out the psycho woke left, and you just go after them, and you name them, and you start naming people until they can't ignore you anymore. And there's no way that you get elected. But what you want to do and what moves the culture is piercing the Overton window, where the press has to talk about you because you're naming people. And another thing you do is, and I know this sounds like late Rothbard, which is anathema to most people, but you say, we're going after the left, we're going after the neoliberal left, and we will ally with anybody, even disaffected Trump supporters. That's what you have to do if you want to make strides in politics. You have to be able to put aside your principles for a little while. Sure, you know that you're free market. You know that you're for less government. But how are you ever going to get power unless you play the game like they play it? It's a combination of Saul Alinsky and maybe a little Vladimir Lenin too. I don't know. Been reading a lot of him this year. He defeated his enemies. I think libertarians can learn a lot, even if you take the violence and you just spiritualize it and you make it not violent words, but attack. I mean, this is something that is so simple. And I put this article out, and it was a mixture of, this is, get out of my head, this is exactly what I've been thinking, to, you've gone off the deep end. And I'm like, that's cool. I could take that. It's not the first time anybody's ever accused me of going off the deep end. But I started getting contacted by leadership, by people in leadership. I started getting contacted by people that I know are making plans down the road that are going to blow people's minds. And they're like, we like the way you think. This is the way things have to be from now on. So maybe there is a little, I put out an article. What will it take for the LP to get my support? Who knows? Maybe things are moving forward. And I know this sounds radical to most people because ANCAPs and libertarians don't want to do anything. They want to, here, read this book. How's that doing? I mean, what libertarianism is, let's see, the 40s. You can start with Rand, come forward with Rothbard, go into the Libertarian Party is 50 years old. Oh, what have we got in a growing technocratic state? States that have been locked down for 8 months. How's libertarianism done? How's it pierced the Overton window? How's libertarianism gone into the culture? They haven't. We're going to have to force this. You're going to have to force these kind of ideas if you want them to get in there. And I know I sound insane, and that's fine.
Well, not to us or to our listeners, yeah. But yeah,
that's fine. But go read State and Revolution and what is to be done by Lenin, and see what he talks about. See how he says you have to name your enemies, and then when you name your enemies, people know you're serious. If you're not naming your enemies, no one cares. If you're not willing to call out, I mean, the only thing that the Libertarian Party should be doing right now is running candidates who are going to go up there and indict the system. They're going to call out the system.
Couldn't agree more. And the final round of voting, I went for Vermin Supreme just because I'm like, at this point, I was going for Hornberger the whole time. I'm like, at this point, it's going to be Joe Jorgensen, so might as well just show that the whole system's a joke, which is why I voted for Kanye West, just to show the whole thing's a joke. And you had mentioned Lenin, and it seems like that libertarians can learn from Lenin. Well, Republicans can too, because it's not who votes that matters, it's who counts the votes. And I can't tell you how many times I was telling people
that was Stalin. That was Stalin, actually.
Sorry,
I mean, they were like this. So
yeah. Okay. Yeah. You get the point. And you had mentioned disaffected Trump voters. Well, I can tell you a personal story about Nick Sarwark right after we're talking maybe March 2017. I think it was right after the first Supreme Court justice was picked. Was blanking on his name right now. But
Gorsuch.
Yep, Gorsuch. And so I was at a private economic discussion group out here in Phoenix. Ernest Hancock invited me there. Nick was sitting next to me. And afterwards, I started telling Nick, I'm like, I was during the 2016 election. I decided right before the election to create a libertarian advisor page to try to convince basically libertarians to vote for Trump because I was so pissed off. This is before I discovered anarchism, before I'd gone down the hole. And so I was so pissed off at Bill Weld making the handgun and AR-15 comment. I'm like, this is, I don't ask for very much, but, I at least want the libertarian candidate to not be advocating taking away guns. I mean, I don't think I'm making any giant leaps here. So I was like, Trump's not, and I was spending the last 4 years calling him out, left and right. So it's not like I jumped on the Trump train and would have been more popular. So I had actually reached more people than the entire Libertarian Party main page on my Facebook page as a nobody who started 2 months before the election and was reaching more than the Libertarian Party and having more engagement than the Libertarian Party. And then frankly, I got cut off November 16th, 2016 from Facebook of my reach. But anyway, that's another story. And so I tried telling Nick, I'm like, listen, I think you guys are missing out big on a lot of Republicans that you guys could be going after. And I think there's some messaging. And, if you want to sit down with me sometime, we're both in Phoenix, I'd be happy to help. He goes, Tim, you know what? This is to my face. Like, he's right in front of me. And he's like, you know what? We don't want anything to do with anyone that even thought about voting for Donald Trump. We naturally have an ally with the left. And I couldn't even believe he's saying this right to my face. And then, but I will say there's one thing I agreed with. And he said, the Libertarian Party is whoever shows up. And so, but you know what? I went through all the bullshit, showed up. And, I want to give a shout out to guys like Michael Heiss, who did a great job with the Mises PAC. And because look, I know back in the day, Ernest Hancock ran out here in Phoenix for Congress, and he had the highest third-party vote total in the country. And they said, well, how'd you do it? And he goes, well, I told everybody not to vote, and it's a waste of time. And the Libertarian Party's like, well, we're definitely not telling people to do that. And so I would only think about running just on the premise of telling everybody it's bullshit. Don't vote for me. The machines are all rigged. I mean, all this information's been out there for years, and it just drives me nuts. And then to see this mamsy-pamsy of, if we just cut a little bit government here, and we get some more women in power, and get some more black people, and, everything's going to be fine. Like, no, we've never had more rights being taken away this quickly, at least in modern day history, at least in my lifetime, a little bit younger. And the fact that we are not calling this out, at a party level, and we just want to talk about social distancing and all this other, placating to the crowd, it just pissed me off to no end. And I didn't mention Joe Jorgensen's name, I think, one time during the whole presidential election because it was non-irrelevant. It's not exciting to me, and it's not the answer. And I feel like someone like you gets that this is not the answer. And so to see that you could have two people who were both Libertarian Party delegates who then didn't even vote for the Libertarian Party candidate. I mean, what else do you need to know? I mean, it's just absolutely, and it's not like I'm bitter that, my guy didn't win. It's just at this stage of the game, if you're not going to get hardcore now, I mean, what else do you need to get hardcore at this point?
I think, I think that, the current political system is struggling because what you're seeing is that here in Canada, you got like over 50%, almost 60% now voting during the federal election. Nobody, people have disengaged themselves because they see the chaotic mess that, the whole system is. And, that's what I think Ernie did is he actually got those people aboard because they understand that there's a guy that actually, cares about what is happening with his message, why do you still vote kind of thing, And I think that, looking at the Roman Empire, for example, at the end of the empire, the politicians killing each other.
I would love that right now. That would be friggin' awesome. Popcorn futures would go through the roof.
Yeah.
But I mean, this whole thing about the left are our natural allies, that is the person who says that
said it to my face 2 feet in front of me.
In my opinion, is not misguided, is purposely trying to sabotage. Because
very likely,
the third party that is the most natural for the left is the Green Party. I mean, that's who they would, if they were planning on going to a third party, they'd go to the Green Party. So that doesn't make any sense. And a lot of those, a lot of the people on the right are just, I mean, they see it. I mean, one thing that I've learned about the whole Trump crowd, especially the Trump cult over the last 4 years, is a lot of them weren't really into politics before 2015, 2016. Trump got them into politics. They've never studied. They've never picked up a book. They don't, they've never read the Machiavellians by Burnham or anything like that. They don't know what politics is all about. And they're just going off of what they know. But what they do know is everything is screwed up. I mean, the government is screwed up. I mean, those are our natural allies, the people who actually know that the government is screwed up, and especially the ones who look at the left and go, that's the enemy. These people would kill you and rape your children and laugh. I mean, they're insane, and that's the woke, insane Twitter left. The neoliberal left, well, they're not going to do it to you, but they're going to go and they're going to kill and rape children over in other countries, and they're going to steal money from you in order to do it. So the left is the one that needs to be taken down. I'm not saying the right's great. I mean, the right pretty much controls the Pentagon and controls the war state, but that's not. Those are the politicians, and those are certain ones. But I mean, just the average person on the street, they really don't know. I mean, they don't know. The average person on the street doesn't know 0.5% of what I know about politics. What I know about, just
of what you forgot about politics,
political theory, just political theory. And I think those are our allies. Those are the people we go after. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if you take a poll of people who call themselves libertarians now or ANCAPs or whatever, the overwhelming majority came from the right. I mean, I came from the right. I never considered myself a leftist. Politically,
I was a socialist, right. By the way. I came from Norway. I grew up in Norway.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I mean,
which is an insane country. Yeah, and it's funny. In Norway, we got 2% of parliament is the Communist Party. Or no, wait, they call it the Red Party.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. What's the difference?
Yeah, well, one thing you had mentioned too, I mean, all this placating to the left, and then, who do they invite to speak? They invite, Maj Toure to speak, and then they uninvite him to speak because, he's too hood for the LP. So then you take, basically the best person in terms of outreach to the black community that we basically have. I don't say, we. And then you disinvite him and disenfranchise him, and then you then have other black people on Twitter then calling out Nick Sarwark, and so it's like then all of a sudden, like, what does he accomplish? He's accomplished literally nothing. And then but are you trying to besmirch the reputation of a guy that's a used car salesman, a DC politico, and a politician? I mean, you couldn't even cast a better. It's like you take the three of the sleaziest professions together, wrap them up into one, and then that's who you've got formally running.
So I was at the debate in the Soho Forum debate in New York when Dave Smith debated Nick in 2019, I believe it was.
That was like a year or two ago.
2019. Yeah, it was September 2019. And after the debate, I had already been drinking a little. Nick's Gene Epstein was doing something at his loft, which was like 2.5 blocks over. 2 blocks over, you got to walk down the block. And I know where he lived. And as I was leaving, Nick was leaving as well, and he was going to it. So, Nick's like, do you know where it is? And I'm like, yeah, walk with me and everything. It took me 2.5 blocks to realize that this guy was the enemy. I mean, Nicholas Sarwark is the enemy.
Well, do you think it's just planted? Because I tried to start a political party here in Manitoba, and we got it off the ground. We had, I was actually uphill battle because they kept on putting the goalposts ahead of us. We got like 5,000 signatures. It's like, no, that's not enough now. And then we got to run X amount of people. And they wanted us to run in every single riding that we have. Like, that's what we call it here. And what ended up happening is I had to leave for like 3 weeks. I was busy with stuff. And then when I come back, the brother of the former Liberal finance minister of Canada tried to take over the party at a meeting. And when I was listening, he's like, yeah, we got to rewrite John's outline here with, having zero taxes, all this stuff. We got to actually, we should have the government do this and this. It's like, if you want to be a part of my party, you got to follow these principles. So get the hell out of here, I said. And he shut up, and then he left.
Well, I hear all this too. It's like, it's, oh, well, they'll just change the rules and everything. Good. Find out who changed the rules. Find out their name. Find out where their kids go to school and start talking about them in public. That's what they do. That's what these psychopaths do. Play their games and see what happens. See if you don't start getting on the news. You don't have to mention their kids. Yeah, that's just I'm having some fun here. But start talking about these people. Find out what their finances are, and start talking about their finances in public. Oh, this person who said now you need 7,500 signatures. Oh, they took money from where? And just start blasting it all over the place. Politics is a dirty game, and if libertarians don't want to,
it's extremely dirty.
What is the Libertarian Party? I mean, you want to call yourself a political party, but you don't want to get political. Politics is war.
Oh yeah, no,
I mean, it's literally it's war. You know, so I mean, take what I said about naming where people's kids go to school with a grain of salt. I'm
thanks. Now we're kicked off YouTube. We've been doing our damnedest to try to get kicked off, and now
I don't want to be fed post. I don't want to fed post on your show. But play their games. I mean, just start. There has to be so many private investigators who are sympathetic to the Libertarian Party. Find out who did it, and just tear their background apart, and just go public with it. Just start blasting it on Twitter. Get everybody to start retweeting it until people just start paying attention. That's the way politics is played. If you're going to play politics, at least play on their level.
I mean, at this point, I mean, you think it's just like by the time we even roll around here to 2024, just it's hard to imagine the state of the world, and who knows? Maybe all these people will die after they get the vaccine. So who knows? Maybe there's that.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, that'd be nice. But then it's just like at this point, I mean, the only reason I'm even involved at all in the LP would be to try to reclaim the word libertarian and not have people think it's just a bunch of liberals running around doing things and reclaiming the word libertarian. But I don't
think it's I think it's gone. Yeah, I think it's gone. I've done episodes with I've talked with Dave Smith on my podcast, Jeff Deist, president of the Mises Institute. I don't call myself a libertarian anymore, and I correct people when they call me a libertarian. I don't call myself an ANCAP anymore. I correct people when they call me that. I think
they're Peter. I think they're experts on how to manipulate and get in and do this political play to try to take over parties that are trying to get any headway. So they're highly trained political assassins, if you can call them that. Sure. A lot of these people that just get put in there. We had a guy. He was Justin Trudeau's best friend. And he actually, I found this out by looking at his website. I didn't know, my party leader gotten him in.
Did he help him dress up in blackface? Is that why he's his best friend?
No, but Justin Trudeau was there when his wife gave birth. That is how crazy it is. So,
was Castro there too?
I was gonna make a joke about that.
Oh, no, definitely. It's that's what's really hilarious. It's like the similarities when you put those.
He looks so much like him. It's ridiculous.
Oh, it's hilarious. The young Castro and Trudeau is spitting images. It's quite hilarious.
So funny.
Yeah, but his mom, his mom was known to be loose. So who knows? And his mom actually was down there and visited Castro, and of course Pierre was very good friends with Castro, and they are the politicians that are completely destroyed. Like his dad, destroyed Canada gold for years, and then of course little Munchkin Trudeau comes in, and then he furthered that again. Then now it's just like running on the UN Agenda 2030. That's yeah.
When I heard him say that, when I saw the video of him talking about just basically parroting the World Economic Forum, I love people who are like, the Great Reset. It's it's a conspiracy theory. It's like, how many world leaders have said "Build Back Better" now?
Oh yeah,
it's like what?
All of
30?
Almost. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean 30. It's like including Biden. It's like, well, what are they talking about?
Actually, I've got an article pulled up right now.
Everybody's talking dark winter as well. That's another big.
Well, it's so funny that you guys, because I only have like maybe like 6 articles I pulled up ahead of time in case things got boring, and so I ended up one of them was the Biden presidency already has its first conspiracy theory, the Great Reset. Of course, it's from the Daily Beast, and another article I had was from Zero Hedge, and my camera's right in the way of it. But Dark Winter was a CSIS scenario code name covering biological weapon use against Americans, and so I believe that was 2001 when that was a code name. And what was the CIS? When you guys are talking, I'll figure out what that meant. But it was one of the government agencies, and this is something you always hear people say, it's going to be a dark winter. And then you've been literally reading a book right now. Sorry, let me get back to the screen on the Great Reset right here, where they are breaking down everything. And I'm reading 2 books right now. One's the New Confessions of an Economic Hitman. The other one is this. And so it's funny how much both those books are really intertwined when you.
Tim Back, you got the what was it, the global the redesign of the global financial architecture, the return of state authority is another one that was kind of predecessing the Great Reset one. So these guys have been planning this takeover scheme for a very long time, and they're just like, now they're just got to be out there because they think we're a bunch of sheep and we're stupid and that we're just going to get along with this peasantry basically that we become. The political politicians have become like the president or the prime minister is the king, or queen, and then you have the lords, which is basically the elected officials everywhere, and then you have the peasants. It's that's where they put themselves, and they built this feudalist kind of system. I don't know if you agree or not, Peter, but that's my thoughts about like the whole political structure now, anyways.
Well, and the last 9 to 10 months, they are setting it up. I mean, making people lose their jobs, making people lose their savings, all of it. I mean, it's insane. Getting rid of small businesses. I can't remember what state I heard it was today, but like a quarter of the small businesses closed in one state, and I was just like,
30% here in Manitoba, almost like we believe 50, which is insane.
Yeah, it's so. I mean, it just. I don't know anyone who knows anyone who died of COVID. I know people who've had it. I know people who've recovered from it. And I mean, I refuse to take the test. I never get sick. I haven't been sick in 8 years. I've had a couple bouts this year where I had like flu-like symptoms, but not full blown because I just don't get. I've been doing vitamin D3 every day for 10 years, and
well, see, I think that's the problem, Peter, is that all of us that are walled in a lot of this stuff, like we actually do take our vitamins. We don't listen to the pharmaceutical Western medicine type of belief, but that's what would put you into a lesser immune system and so on. So I think that's why a lot of us are not seeing this at all, because it's we're just naturally trying to keep our health and immune system at a good place.
Especially when we're going to big conferences. I mean, I met Peter. He was at the Mises event down in Jekyll Island. I was at the Red Pill event. I mean, there was like 600 people indoors at the Red Pill event. Was at Freedom Fest.
You met me there?
I was at the bar. It was kind of late.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. That was. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It was. Yeah. That was kind of late. Yeah.
And then I think after that, I ended up sneaking into the Federal Reserve room, and so I've got a documentary on that as part of it. And then so we were there, and then I was at the Jackalope Freedom Festival, Pork Fest, Fork Fest, Anarchapulco. Now, I did start off the year getting super sick, and I think I actually did have it before it was like even like a thing, but it was only because I was at an open bar on New Year's Eve at a wedding in New York, and then flew out the next day with a compromised immune system. And I'm usually getting tons of sun out here in Arizona and outside all the time. And my now ex-wife, she got much more sick than I did. But I spent the first 2 days of the year just like shaking while sweating. And my first Facebook post of the year was I've been shaking while simultaneously sweating for 48
sure
hours.
It wasn't a bad hangover, Tim?
Yeah. I mean, I know. Yeah, I know it wasn't that. But anyways, you know what? The moral of the story is I'm alive. We're around kicking. But how quickly do you think they're going? Because it almost like as I'm like about 100 something pages into this, just got it this week. It looks like. Basically, it seems like they're just trying to reverse engineer how they want to have society and then figuring out the problems to then get society to go to where they want to be, like a Hegelian dialectic problem, reaction, solution. And where they want it is, we need, I thought the original game plan was going to be we're going to have a war with Russia. This is, again, this is like around like 2013, 14 when I'm formulating this. So I think the game plan was they know the currency eventually is unsustainable. It's going to collapse. So let's just have an enemy. We'll blame it on this war. If it wasn't for the Ruskies, everything would have been fine. And so I think that they had to throw a Hail Mary in here with Trump, and they were going to eventually plan something like this. And this was part of their extenuated, maybe plan F or something that they had for us, and they realized that they're running out of time, and they knew they had the voting machines, and I think they just want to get us on a digital currency because once they get us on digital currency, it's pretty much going to be game over. And so, Peter, where do you see us in terms of getting on that currency? Do you think we're like a year away from that, 2 years, 5 years? It's not going to happen, or where do you see things going from the a central bank digital currency? Because it seems like it's right around the corner, in my opinion.
I think I would be able to answer that a lot better in like 6 months. I need to see how much further they take this COVID thing with the shutdown, with the lockdowns and everything. Because in my mind, what that digital currency is going to be, it's going to be the UBI. That's how they're
going to issue it. Yeah.
And you saw that the first CARES Act $1,200 bill, the Maxine Waters bill, was actually calling for a Fed dollar, mm-hmm. and that mm-hmm. was a trial balloon, in my opinion.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And John and I are in complete agreement that is the end game: is universal basic income. Oh, sorry, you didn't get your vaccine, so you're only going to get half as much. Oh, sorry, you didn't get the second round of the vaccine, you're not getting anything.
We're pretty close here. We had something called CERB, which actually gave people more than minimum income. And then now it seems like they turned it into some kind of EI type of system. But now there's been, the talk about next year, end of next year, they're going to try to turn it into UBI. And there we are, right? Like that's the end game. And like here in Canada, the central bank, I don't even know what to say. At least it's a hockey stick, so it makes.
They actually make the Fed look good.
Canada, right?
They actually make the Fed look good in Canada.
Yeah,
what you guys were doing.
Well, at least we have the hockey sticks here, so why not? Why not go full Canadian on the monetary system? It makes sense, but no, it's totally devastated. Like everybody, and we have it's hilarious. I gotta laugh at this. We have our version of the FDIC, constant rolling commercials on mainstream TV here. See the CDIC. I actually wrote a book, and in that book I found out that they only have 0.39% of all the deposits under 100,000. So they don't have anything to one big bank falls under. They have zero money to back something like that, but it's pure propaganda because the whole system that they have with money, it's all based upon trust. When that trust breaks, I looked at hyperinflations throughout history and devaluations of currencies, and every single time it's just like a trust link that breaks, that people's like, screw it, this currency is worthless, I can't buy anything with it anymore, so people just leave it, and then suddenly it takes under a year until it's gone and it's game over. But until that trust link is broken, that's when you still have it around. And I think it could happen. You never know, because people are especially now in the U.S., here in Canada too. 1 in 10 Canadians are still on welfare right now because of the government shutdowns, and in the U.S. it's pretty bad as well. So who knows? It might be happening very soon.
Yeah, I mean, I still want to see a couple months. I want to see, well, here's what I want to see. I want to see Inauguration Day, what happens when Biden's president. I want to see where COVID goes. I want to see if there's a whole bunch of people said that COVID was going to disappear after the election, and they've just doubled down. So now, of course, those people who made that prediction are like, oh, no, we have to wait until after Inauguration Day. But I do think that is actually a good point. If they hadn't said after the election, I wouldn't make fun of them. But yeah, I want to wait until after Inauguration Day and see if this continues. If this COVID stuff continues after Inauguration Day, we are screwed. I mean, that just means this is not going away. And I don't think it's going away. And I've been doing episodes with my friend Vin Armani. We've done 6 or 7 this year. It feels like we narrated this whole thing because we started doing episodes on this in the ending of March. And we had predictions that a lot of my predictions came true, but were worse than my predictions. Like on masks, I said in the ending of March, I said people are still going to be wearing masks in April. I said 50% of people would be in July. I said in March, 50% of people will still be wearing masks in July. No, that was 100% in most places. In most of the bigger areas, rural areas, of course. And we just predicted all of this. We predicted the violence. I knew what was going to happen. I knew what they were using this for. So after Inauguration Day, if this doesn't disappear, if they double down, if there's a national mask mandate, if there's a national lockdown or something, then we're just screwed. I mean, it's going to go directly to some kind of UBI. It's going to be electronic. It's going to be contingent upon behavior.
Of course,
you could
like
start
China.
You could start seeing the Chinese kind of social credit score coming into existence. I mean, people who say that that's not coming here, I mean, it may not come here next year, but it's coming here.
Yeah, they call it contact tracing instead. I mean,
come with
a different name for it.
And Vin, my friend Vin, has been a beta tester on iPhones for a decade. So like it was the ending of April. He had posted screenshots of, hey, there's the contact tracing software. It's in the new iPhone update. He got it a month before it came out, and there it is, and everything. And you can't turn it off. You can turn off notifications, but you can't turn it off. So yeah, I mean, especially we all know, anyone who studied 1913, what happened at Jekyll Island, whoever controls the money is going to control the people. And if they get to the point where it's like you have a significant, it doesn't have to be half, but you have a significant part of the population, say maybe even 20%, that are on that UBI, that are on that, it's just coming. They'll see how that works for people. And if they think it's working and they have control over these people, they'll do something else to mess the economy up, to crash the economy, to get more people on it and more people on it and more people on it. And then they just have us.
Well, I mean, at the end of the year, you have I think a lot of the people who are making even more money being unemployed. I think part of that CARES Act ends at the end of this year. So, I mean, that's coming up. I'm sure it'll probably get extended, or who knows, maybe they won't extend it. So that way more people have to, be at the behest of the government. But we're just at this end game right now and so close to it. And to see so many people asleep, and especially out here in Arizona, where I was down in different, more, rural cowboy areas, and to see, a cowboy having with a sidearm on his hip, and then he's wearing a mask. It's just like, what type of, world are we living in over here? Because I want to get out of this world that we're in right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, if he had a bandana, that would have been, that would have made more sense.
At least. Yeah. Hey, I don't know if you guys have seen or heard about the letter that was leaked here in Canada from what's called the Prime Minister's office. And it was a letter from a supposed MLA that, pushed this out and said that this is their agenda. And I wanted, if we can have like a little bit of time, Tim, I just want to like read this to you, because it's kind of,
we don't know what MLA means, so we don't know what MLA means. So
it's like it's basically like a governor of a state, like one of the governors.
State or province?
It's province.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have provinces and where you guys have states and so on.
Yeah, I know.
But anyway, so it's like, yeah. Anyway, so it came to the prime minister. So this guy is high up in the government and supposedly leaked, what the government plans are. Let me read this, because this is like actually what he says so far is kind of scary, because it's like starting to like move towards what he's done here in Canada. So so this is what he wrote here. Face in secondary lockdown restrictions on a rolling basis, starting with major metropolitan areas first and then expanding outward, expected by November. Well, it happened. Like we had the city, then suddenly they did the metro regions, they call it, which is totally Agenda 2030. And then now the whole province is under red, which is like full kind of lockdown. Then they said rushed acquisition of construction of isolation facilities across every province and territory, expected by 2020 December. Well, they put out, I have a PDF document that shows, that they have all these facilities getting built. There's actually one in Winnipeg already where I'm at. Then it says, daily new cases of COVID-19 will surge beyond capacity of testing, including increase in COVID-related deaths following the same growth curves expected by the end of November. Well, that's what media is reporting right now here. Complete and total secondary lockdown, much stricter than the first. Second rolling phase restrictions expected by the end of December 2020, early January 21. Well, I don't know. Like we're kind of like they're hinting at it in media here. Reform and expansion of the unemployment program to be transitioned into universal basic income program expected by Q1 2021. Projected COVID-19 mutation or infection with secondary virus referred to as COVID-21, leading to a third wave with much higher mortality rate and higher rate of infection expected by February 2020. There was a mink that ran away, supposedly like mutated, like minks got mutated COVID, whatever, in Denmark, and now they ran away. I saw an article out they had run away. So again, it's just pushing. Let me just continue here. Daily new cases of COVID hospitalizations and COVID-19 and COVID-21 related deaths will exceed medical care facilities capacity by Q1 2021. Enhanced lockdown restrictions, referred to as third lockdowns, will be implemented. Full travel restrictions will be imposed, including in interprovincial and intercity, expected by Q2 2021. Transition of individuals into basic income program expected by mid-quarter 2021. Projected supply chain breakdowns, inventory shortages, large economic instability expected late Q2 2021. Deployment of the military personnel into major metropolitan areas, as well as major roadways to be established, travel checkpoints, restricted travel and movement.
That just sounds like a target-rich environment.
Yeah,
well, you got the general. You got that one general coming out like a couple weeks ago saying that within 24 hours Americans are going to get vaccinated. Now, maybe that some people are interpreting that as anyone that wants to. Other people were interpreting that as
the
everyone.
Military here is got to work on distributing it as well. This whole thing. Like I was listening to a top doctor, one of the top. Who is it? Stephen Gundry. He's a top heart surgeon. He's done over 10,000 heart surgeries. He's not going to take the vaccine, he said. Like, he doesn't take the flu vaccine because he doesn't trust it. It's like 70% effective. It's
Never had one.
Why would you? Yeah, it's the same with me. And you know what's funny? My dad passed away just recently, but he actually took the flu vaccine once. He was never sick with the flu really at all. That one time he got so sick that he said, like, I'm never taking it again. And so it's, yeah.
Well, you know why I never took it? Because when I was 21, when I was 21, I didn't know anything about libertarianism, and it was just my dick was running my whole life. I was dating a cop who was 25, and she had to have flu shots all the time, and she would get them, and she'd be sick for 3 days, and I'm like, I'm not doing this ever. This is ridiculous, It's like everyone I knew who got a flu shot, they're like, oh yeah, I was, it felt like I had the flu for like a day. I'm like, no, that's not happening at all. I'm not doing that. That just seems ridiculous. Eat well, take care of yourself. I mean, and it's funny, you were talking about going to events and everything. Third week in September, I was in New York for a few days. Got together with friends, wasn't wearing a mask. The only place I wore a mask, and it was the most ridiculous mask, I mean, it couldn't protect you from anything, was in the subway. I wore that same mask on the plane, sneezed, everything came right through the mask, right into my hand. So, I mean, it was ridiculous. Then I went to the Jekyll Island thing, and a week later, the next weekend, Tom Woods had a party at his house with like 100 people. I mean, we were shoulder to shoulder in most.
I saw you were at Ron Paul's house too, weren't you?
That sounds like a super spreader event, doesn't it?
Yeah. And then a couple weeks later, I went to Texas, went to Lake Jackson, went to Ron Paul's house. And then we had the event afterwards was in a really small venue, smaller than the one we normally, the one they normally have is very spread out actually, and naturally. When I went to it in 2018, it was very spread out. And this place was like, everyone's crammed in. I haven't heard anybody getting sick. I haven't heard any reports of anything that I've done so far this year of especially in the last since September. I've been trying to travel as much as possible. I haven't heard anybody getting sick. None of us are getting together and wearing masks or doing anything like that. It's just I don't know what's going on, man. I just don't know what's going on.
It's flu season.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
and then I did want to bring up when you were talking about different digital currencies and getting on universal basic income, and I forgot my train of thought before, but I remembered it this time, and it had to do with in China they're talking about having they're already doing it. So in Shenzhen they had a lottery with their for the chance to win $30. They had I think 2 million people sign up to get this app, and so then you got
they have the account, right?
Then you've got other things like the Brookings Institute was saying that one way to do this is you give every person that gets the vaccine $1,000, but you only give them $200 right out of the gates, and then they get the rest of the $800 comes once 80% of the U.S. population has been vaccinated. So then that way they start turning the tattletale snitch squads against the people that haven't been vaccinated, and so it really is very cunning what these people are up to.
I don't need $1,000 that bad.
Yeah, but if you
don't.
But there's a lot of people, we don't, but the people who out there who, they've got $15,000 of credit card debt. They can't make their next payment as soon as the money comes in. It's all already gone out. They can't feed their families. Any job they did have was now lost. And so they're checkmating people into this position. And it's just incredible. And they've seen different. I forgot who put it out. What one of the universities or think tanks was talking about different ways to deal with the anti-vaxxers and how we can basically get more of the use messaging. And I did see one of your episodes was on Bernays. I didn't watch that one. I did see that was a show that you had, and so
that was actually on Keith Knight's "Don't Tread on Me" podcast.
Okay, I know Keith. Yep,
he's part of the Libertarian Institute. So that was a book I read.
No, he's a great guy. Yep.
Yeah, read a year and a half ago, and he's like, "You want to do an episode on Bernays?" I'm like, "Always. I always want to talk about Edward Bernays."
It's funny. I think I met Keith actually the day that I was having that dinner with.
You guys were in Arizona. Yeah.
Yep, and actually he was at I met him at Anarchizona. I was speaking up there, and it gave a whole talk about how the economy wasn't really that great, and was using all Trump's quotes against him. Talking about the only reason it was something along the lines of the unemployment number is the most fake, phony number that's ever been invented just to make presidents and politicians look good. And that was a quote by Trump in either 2015 or 2016. And last week, Roger Stone was trying to tell me how great the economy was, and I whipped that one out. And then Roger quickly wanted to get onto a different subject once he realized that he wasn't talking with a normal, with a normal person. But how do you see this playing out, though? I mean, in terms of the universal basic income and the vaccine, I mean, do you think that we're going to get to this critical? I mean, what percentage of people do you think are going to take it? Because I know we're all in our own little bubbles, and a lot of people I know are not going to take it. But it seems like the general public. I mean, I'm probably putting it at somewhere like 50-60%, maybe.
Yeah,
higher.
I think to do it politically demographically. I think there's going to be a whole lot more Democrats that are lining up to do it. I think there are some people on the right who are really scared. I happen to work in an area that would be more. I work in Atlanta. I don't live in Atlanta, but I work in Atlanta, and it seems like there's more Democrats. Like the Democrats had just bought. It's funny. At one point, it almost seemed like it was split down political lines, party lines. That the Democrats were 100%, stay home, blah, 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 and the Republicans were like, no, screw you, and everything like that. But it seems like as the time has gone on, and when Trump started embracing it and started, this is a dangerous thing and everything, a lot of people on the right started going, percentage wise. I don't know, man. I think that there are a lot of people who want this vaccine. I mean, I might share a bed with one, and it doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't make sense to me, because this is going to be a novel vaccine, a vaccine that's never done what this is supposed to do before, and they've rushed it to market. I almost believe that I've heard a couple people say that it's going to be a placebo. That they're just going to be injecting saline or something like that into people to see what happens. And because it just doesn't, there's no way. I mean, they've already said that. I remember Scott Horton had talked to a virologist who worked at a major East Coast hospital. If I mentioned the name of it, you'd know. But the guy wanted to remain anonymous, obviously, because at the beginning of all this, if you broke the narrative, you were run out of the business. But he said that everyone's gonna have to get it. He said everyone's gonna have to get it. They're gonna have to build immunity to it. You're gonna have to have antibodies to it. And as soon as people started talking about herd immunity, what happened? Oh, the antibodies are going to go away after a while and you'll get it again. Well, I mean, that sounds like the flu.
Yeah.
It sounds like the flu.
Which they've never even guessed the correct strain of the flu and during any of these flu shots they're getting anyways. I mean, they literally have a 0% track record of guessing what the flu is. And I had a buddy who, he was, a surgeon at Harvard, and he was telling me that the whole thing is, just BS, and a lot of other doctors there think it's BS, but they are not allowed to say anything because it'd be off with their heads if they're one of the ones who are caught. And there was another big clinic that everyone knows, household name, and he said that the head of that clinic basically also knows it's BS, but they aren't allowed to come out and speak out against it for the very reasons that you just articulated. And so I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be.
I mean, look at Knut Witkowski. Gene Epstein introduced me to Knut Witkowski. I mean, a world-class epidemiologist, Hoover University for 20 years. And he says right now, he said, and I had him on my podcast. I had dinner with him when I was up in New York. He says, look, I have the cure to this. I have the cure to this, and it's on the supplement. It's 2 supplements. It just needs to be fused together, and you take it, and you just take it on a regular basis. Whenever they announce there's a flu out there, there's a coronavirus out there, you take it, and it'll just go through your bloodstream, and it'll absorb all of the it'll absorb the viral antibody, and you'll piss it out. And I mean, the guy's been. I don't know how my video my audio with him hasn't been taken down off of YouTube, because all of his videos have been taken down. He was like giving interviews early in this, and they were all removed. And because he's like one of those people who's like, masks don't make any sense. This doesn't, this is easily solved. This isn't something we have to worry about. Everybody go back to work and everything like that. And he's one of those people who's a very knowledgeable. And because of that, I mean, he's German, so he's very arrogant. And I like that. I want to, I mean, he presents himself as an elite, and he's an impressive elite. I like impressive elites. I don't like when someone says that person's an elite, and I'm like, that person's a scumbag. I'm smarter than that person. My IQ is 20 points higher than that person. But I mean, look at the way someone like him gets treated, or the doctors in California. Remember those the 2 doctors that all their videos got taken down?
Yeah, they got memory hold real quick.
Well, it was hilarious. We had the former head of like the health fair in Manitoba, in our province. He was on CTV, the big national news channel. His video was taken down initially because he said, like, I have a couple of stats here that I want to go that your viewers might find interesting, but of course that disappeared off of the news channel's website. And we were talking about how many people potentially could go on UBI. Well, I have numbers actually from Canada and what's called CERB, which was kind of like a form of UBI, because like basically it shut everybody down and everybody had to apply for this. They got in 27.9 million application. There's 37 million Canadians. There was 8.9 million people that got it, so that's about 24% of the population actually took and were able to receive it, because they had certain limitations on it. So there you go. But there was 27 million applications, so there might be a lot of doubling up there. But let's say that it was half of the Canadian population almost that put in and wanted that extra money and just like quit working basically because this whole COVID thing is scary. So I think that that's probably what you're looking at. Like you're looking at like at least, as you said, 30-40%. That will jump aboard to something like that, because what is more fun than sitting on your ass doing nothing at home and watch Netflix all day and get paid from the government?
I wish I could do it.
And a lot of times getting paid more than even if you than in your real job too. So it's
Oh
just,
yeah, I knew people who were still working on their job when all that slowdown went down in April and in May. They were still working like 32 hours a week on their job, but they were getting, I think it was 600 federal and 300 state. So they were getting 32 hours on their job and another $900.
Insane.
And then for the CARES Act, I mean, as long as if you were self-employed and you're the only person in your business, the only stipulation of you having that turn into a grant is that you had to pay yourself. So if you got 3 months worth of income, you could just, okay, well, the only stipulation is you didn't fire anybody. Well, if you're the only employee, you just pay yourself, and then boom, not financial advice, but that's one of the things that could.
Well, I have a friend who owns a business, a very successful business and everything, and he took it, and what he did with it? He gave all of the money to his employees. He basically said, I'm splitting it up all amongst you, and I'm not keeping any of it for myself. And he gave it to his employees. And he's like, and I asked him, I'm like, you're a libertarian. He's like, I pay 6 figures in taxes every year. He goes, I'm getting some of that back. Screw you. But I'm not even getting it back. I'm giving it to my employees. So what the hell, So there were so many. I saw libertarians on like Facebook going, oh, you're going to take that money? It's like, what? The government put you out of a job. Okay. The government said you couldn't work. They owe you something. And they're like, well, you're just putting that. I'm like, so if the government took your house on eminent domain, you wouldn't take the check?
Yeah, what are you gonna do? No,
these are the exact kind of libertarians who are going to be like, oh, I'm going to get on the boxcar because Walmart owns it, and Walmart's a private company, dude, and you can't say anything bad about private companies. It's like the autism is just insane. It's just think.
Well, the government, first of all, the government pays a whole bunch of money in food stamps to those Walmart employees as well.
Yeah, when you break it down, I mean, Walmart's like one of the biggest, subsidiary or subsist off the government almost more than anybody because when you break
welfare
down
wars,
when you break down even not even the corporate welfare, but just from the food stamps and if you broke down what modern day bread lines would look like, it'd be crazy. But one of the things that I saw one of your titles here for an episode that you did had to do with the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, and I wanted to see. I do have a shirt that says the Unabomber was right. Obviously, I'm not wearing it right now. And do you want to maybe get into some of the, I guess, like the synopsis of his writings, because it was something along the lines of you're gonna have all these like rich white liberals, sort of trust fund babies.
Well, I mean, his original, the manifesto, Industrial Society and Its Future, he starts off just attacking the left. And one of the reasons I think he starts off attacking the left is he believed that they were his natural ally, but they didn't want to listen to what he had to say. And so he just destroys the left. He goes after the right too, but I mean, he goes way more after the left. And I think that's because he probably would consider himself part of the historic left. Basically what Ted Kaczynski said was that technology has just gotten to the point where we're slaves to it. And it's taking a part of us that most people can't live without it. There's so much more to it. Ted is really hard to explain, but very easy to understand when you read him. I'm trying to do this the best that I can. He's saying that technology basically takes meaning away from your life. So technology makes your life so easy that you have become so reliant upon it that you start losing your humanity. And when you read how he explains it, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, when everything's so, it used to be a trope 40 or 50 years ago when you would talk about like rich celebrities' kids, and how everything's done for them and everything like that. Really, when you think about modern life, it's gotten a lot easier. There's so much that we don't have to do that that our ancestors had to do, that they didn't take for granted anything, and we take for granted everything. I mean, I take for granted so much. And and Ted wanted to go back to his whole goal was to drive us back to the Stone Age, basically. Not the Stone Age, but to a more
A simpler
agrarian,
life.
provide for yourself. You have to provide for yourself. I mean, I'm positive if he could have taken down the power grid, he would have taken that. If he could take down the power grid, he's still alive. And my dream interview, that's the one guy I want to interview more than anyone else on my podcast. But yeah, I just think that he nailed it. And what's funny is, if you just look politically, he, like in The System's Neatest Trick, he predicts Antifa. He predicts that there's going to be this useful idiot crowd of violent thugs running around that on the streets, breaking stuff and trying to tear down government buildings, that the state is going to use to increase their size. And it's just brilliant stuff like that. But yeah,
it's like the Maoists, that went around and terrorized people that didn't adhere to any communist policies as well. Like they used that to the Great Leap Forward as well. Taking that, and it's interesting how like similar the Great Leap Forward that Mao tried to do is like it's different age now, but in a similar way that what the the Great Reset is talking about as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, the Great Reset actually does sound more like, not technologically, but psychologically sending us back in time. It's almost like they think they're doing us a favor. And maybe they are. Who knows? I don't. It's like, who the hell knows until it happens. But I know that article from 2016 where it said by 2030 you're not going to own anything, you're going to love it,
and you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, by Klaus Schwab.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at, my belief is that I know that a lot of libertarian theory is based around private property. And it's almost like private property is morality. I look at private property as reducing violence. If everyone knows what they own, no one's fighting over anything.
Yeah.
So that's, to me, it's a more practical kind of thing. I try to look at it more practically than philosophically. Practically, if hey, this is my house and everything. If this is my house and I can prove it, there's not going to be any friction. But if people don't own it's like, oh, I'm using this today, like the classic concept of usufruct. I think even Jefferson was a fan of usufruct. And I think Louisiana still has usufructory laws where if there's a piece of property that's not being used, if you go on it and you improve it, you can actually claim it, but you don't own it, but you can use it legally, something like that. That just opens itself up to potential violence. And that's the way I look at private property. But yeah,
well, it's like looking at the former Yugoslav states. I have a lot of friends here. Actually, my boss is down from there, and a whole bunch of his people that works for him comes from Bosnia, Serbia, and Croatia, and so on. That all they could talk about is like, you guys are insane. Like, what you're letting your government do to yourself. Like, the guys are saying, like, I'm armed to the teeth. I'm ready to stand up if the government comes and stomp on me here, because you guys have don't seem to care or have no clue what's coming for you. Like what we're seeing here happen, back in the day that really destroyed and enslaved. I had a buddy of mine. His dad was in prison for 3 years for singing an anti-government song back under the Tito regime, and he was tortured and he was scarred for life. Just for singing a song,
I've studied Tito. That doesn't sound like Tito. Tito would send people to an island in the Caspian and basically pay for their existence there. And that's one of the problems is when Tito died, all those people came back and pretty much led to the downfall with I don't know. I mean, and this could be. I know that Tito. I've read his military writings from early on, and he had to do some brutal stuff early on. So it could have been very early on. But I know later Tito was just like, I'm just going to send this guy to an island and just get the hell away from here. I'm not contradicting it, but I'm not trying to contradict it. There are two Titos, though. There was post World War II and post World War II Tito, and 70s Tito. And Tito still, I think, has the largest funeral for a world leader ever. There's videos on YouTube. You can see George H.W. Bush and Saddam Hussein walking and talking at his funeral. There's some really weird bedfellows at his funeral. For some reason, everybody liked that guy. And world leaders like that guy. I guess because when I was growing up, there was like, I had clothes that were made in Yugoslavia, so Yugoslavia did business with everybody. They were a different kind of. A lot of people call them communists or socialists. They weren't 100% communist or socialist. It was different. I don't discount that he did torture people, because I've read his World War II writings, and the guy was brutal, but he had to be brutal. He was trying to fight off the communists and the fascists at the same time.
So, well, you have a lot of Nazi sympathizers. Like a lot of the family of my friend, they loved the Nazis, and they were big in the Yugoslav republics, of course, down at the time. So there was always a thing fought back and forth. But of course, it's it was. My buddy also lived like back in the Tito days, and he said like they had nothing. They had very little, and people seemed okay with it, but it's like they didn't necessarily everybody was equally miserable, he said, at the time. So
what's really interesting about that, when I was at the Ron Paul conference in Lake Jackson, Texas, just a few weeks ago, I was having lunch with somebody who grew up in Tito's Yugoslavia, and he's an anarchist now, but he has a picture of Tito on his refrigerator. He had a totally different, and he's not a rich guy or anything like that. He had a totally different testimony of what Yugoslavia was like.
Yeah, it's interesting because you got the two ways of thought, right? Like you got the sympathizers on the one end, and then you have the other ones. Like I want my freedom. I couldn't live in a society like that. I couldn't live in Norway, which is like hardcore socialist. But now they're falling back because they're seeing that it's not working. But yeah, no, it's.
So you went to Canada, and it's so different.
Well, it's actually turning into Norway right now. So
I know. It sucks, man.
Well, I'm taking a look. I'm taking a look at Tito's funeral right now, and it says that there were 4 kings, 31 presidents, 6 princes, 22 prime ministers, 47 ministers of foreign affairs from both sides of the Iron Curtain and beyond. In total, 128 countries out of 154 UN members at the time were represented. Also present were delegates from 7 multilateral organizations, 6 movements, and 40 political parties. That is pretty insane. Almost sounds like we're talking like Robert Maxwell or something with when he passed away under suspicious.
It's just nuts. I was like, I've watched those videos, and you're just seeing like the strangest bedfellows talking to each other and everything. And Tito, I started studying Yugoslavia a couple years ago when I saw a documentary, and then I started getting into Tito, and I have his war writings, and I have a bunch of his letters and World War II letters and things like that. And really interesting fellow. I honestly believe that he loved the people of his country.
Well, probably you could have love and love. Yeah, you could have love.
But if you were a dissenter.
Well, he's like Putin. Like, think about Putin, though. Like, it's the same thing. Like, he actually loves Russia and loves the people. They're actually very free in Russia until you stand up. Then you're like, goodbye.
Yeah, I was talking to Jeff Monson, who's an American former MMA competitor, and he lives in Russia now. And he said he believes that Putin is a hardcore nationalist in the Lenin in the Lenin camp.
Well, he's former KGB. What can you ask for? Always buddies with KGB, right? Like, they came out of there, and they basically, were able to take over and win over Russia and run it. But they're running it in a kind of free market way on the countryside. People are not getting bothered by a lot of authority. So the general public. I talk to Russians a lot, and they're in general. They don't seem to mind too much. There's a few that I have a friend of mine that got basically, him and his dad got chased out of the country because his dad stood up against Putin, and he basically got his like, get the hell out of here, or face the hammer, because he basically lost the business and everything. But yeah, he's over here. So you got stories everywhere. I talk to Chinese that are extremely pro China and love China and what they're doing, and then you got the anti-Chinese that you just like despises everything that China is standing for, and so on. So you got both sides. Like, it's interesting, whoever can tell history on the biggest scale and get their idea the furthest out, is what history really becomes as well, I believe. Like looking throughout history, of course. So I think that has a lot to do with it as well.
I have to wrap in a couple minutes. Can we?
We're almost at the end. But I guess in closing, is there anything in terms of hope that you might have for where things are going, or any positive signs for what's coming out? I mean, I know we've got more people homeschooling, some things like this, but is it all too little too late? Good. Is there any optimism you want to potentially give? And we also want to let people know that they can find you at the libertarianinstitute.org, where you can find Peter's podcast, and pretty much everywhere else where you can find different podcast apps, and that is Freeman Beyond the Wall, if you guys want to search that out and find out more about Peter.
Hope. Yeah, definitely. Like, the more people homeschooling is hopeful. Black and gray markets growing is always something good, because black and gray markets weaken the state. Not to the point where it can collapse the state, but I mean, it can weaken the state. Less tax revenue, things like that. My hope at this point is that you're just going to have a good, people remember the term 3%ers, and that means that like 3% of the population was down with the Revolutionary War. So 3% of the population was able to actually move the other 97% in a direction that they wanted. I think that's the only thing that we can hope for now, is that we can hope that there's a good portion, especially if they start talking about like mandatory vaccinations. I think that, or if Biden starts talking about gun buybacks or something like that, hopefully that's the line in the sand. Because one thing that I've been saying recently is that it doesn't seem like Americans have a line in the sand anymore. And
I hope it's not like Canada, where they banned assault rifles, like semi-automatic. Not even we can't even buy automatic rifles.
Well, I hope they have buybacks, and we can just stand out there in the parking lot and try to offer more money for the guns to the cops. Or you've seen where people have had like, or you've seen where people
free market solution. I love it, Tim.
Or you've seen where people have had like these like bullshit guns they put together for like $5 of just all this scrap metal. Then they've gotten like $200 for this gun, and one guy actually did a couple of those, then went out and bought a real gun with the proceeds. But yeah, so and also we're at the point now, we're at the top of Zero Hedge right now. Ray Dalio, which is he runs the largest hedge fund in the world, says the United States is at a tipping point that could lead to revolution or civil war. But it's like every day you're seeing another one of these huge. It's not just you and me and people that listen to us and other anarcho-capitalists, and I don't want to put any labels on anybody, but now it's just like everybody is talking about this and knows it's there. And so at least now, I mean, I was saying before the election, at least if Biden gets in there, at least, we're not going to have to wait around for the rest of my life to get to, a civil war. At least maybe now we'll come a little bit quicker. But we do appreciate Peter's time today. Thank you, John, for hanging with us as well. And you guys can go to libertarianinstitute.org to find more information with Peter. But anyways, thank you guys for hanging. And also remember to sign up for that email list below. That way you can be the first to get all of our content. Take care, everybody.